Hello, hello, day drinkers. It's rock and roll week. So I've dressed accordingly. I have bright red lipstick on. I have a jacket that doesn't fit me since the quarantine. Since I started baking everything in sight. And my husband's drums are on display. I'm just showing off that somebody in my family has musical talent. But my guest today is Xio Axelrod, who wrote. This book has got to be one of the most ambitious books I've read in a very, very long time. There's a lot going on. There's so many balls in the air, and she juggles them all so seamlessly. So I'm very, very excited to talk to her about it, even though I messed up lots of dates and times. Sometimes when you make a mistake and then you just keep making a mistake. It was a bit of like one of those. So I'm going to read the back cover copy of this book because my mom likes it when I do that, and then I'm going to bring Xio in. So this is called The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes, a story of love, loss, and rock and roll. A Star is Born meets Daisy Jones and the Six by way of Colleen Hoover in this unique story following an all-female band on the brink of breaking out. This diverse cast of characters play hard and love harder, no matter the ultimate price. Sharp, propulsive, and sexy. Once I started, I couldn't put it down. Antonio and Seb are imprinted in my book-loving heart. I genuinely, truly relish this book. That's from Christina Lauren. Growing up in dive bars up and down the East Coast, Tony Bennett's guitar was her only companion until she met Sebastian Quick. Seb was a little older, a lot wiser, and before long, he was Tony's way out, promising they'd escape their stifling small town together. Then Seb turned 18 and split without looking back. Now Tony's all grown up and making a name for herself in Philadelphia's indie scene. When a friend suggests she try out for a hot new up-and-coming band, Tony decides to take a chance. Strong, feminist, and fierce as fire, Tony B and the Lilies are the perfect match. Except Seb's now moonlighting as their manager. Whatever. Tony can handle it, no problem. Or it wouldn't be if Seb still didn't have a piece of her heart, not to mention the key to her future. It's all of that and more, guys. It's all of that and more. So let's bring in Xio.
That's always an awesome intro. Hi.
I marvel all the time. I'm going to jump right into this. Sure. I marvel all the time at really good copy editors, how they take so much. Your book is sprawling and ambitious, and it's the story. There's a lot of stories going on, and you read that, and she makes it sound so easy. Or whoever wrote that makes it sound so easy.
I think it might actually be part of them is from the proposal that I wrote for the series. So some of it, yeah. Because the series was bought on proposal. I had no books, and I was like, well, let me just make it as like alive as I possibly can. So we tweaked a little bit for the back cover. But yeah, it's amazing. They pulled out the best bits, and like put it together, and yeah.
Well, if you wrote part of that and they used part of that, you have a superpower and are magic. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So we're sipping whiskey like we're rock stars.
Oh, yeah. Where's I do what I do? Oh, here it is. Got my Glencairn.
Oh, man, you are not fooling around.
Oh, no, we don't play in this house.
I have a pound of ice in here because
you're like, I'm going to have a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of water.
I appreciate the solidarity.
Oh, well, anytime. It is day drinking. I'm here to expand my horizons. But you have like a proper collection behind you.
Yeah, we do. And it grew over the lockdown. It grew exponentially. We were like, who's shipping?
Can you give us a little tour? Like what's your favorite?
Obviously, this is not where I keep the bar in the room where I write, but I brought some selections of. So what I'm drinking is Weller Special Reserve. I actually got this as a birthday present from Mr. X because you have the only way you can get this in Pennsylvania is via lottery. Like they release so few bottles of this stuff that around the country. This used to be like a $40 bottle, and now they go for like $2.75 or up, depending on where you catch the auction or whatever. But I happened to find a bottle online in New Jersey, so I had to have it sent to my dad's house, and then on their way somewhere, they dropped it off here because I couldn't get it. But yeah, it's really good. It's worth all the hype. I don't know if it's worth like the $1,100, $1,200 that some people pay for it. I did not pay that for this, but it's definitely really good. It's nice and smooth. It's got nice caramel tones. But then I think you're drinking Writer's Tears, right? Are you drinking Writer's Tears?
Yeah. Stole my husband's bottle.
This is the double oak. So as oaky as that is, this is double that. So I don't know if you like
That's the red one. Is that the red label? He talks about that. Like,
it could be. I haven't even opened this yet. I just got it. So it's like brand new. And then I have Redbreast 12, which is my go-to Irish whiskey. And then this one's fun. This is Glenlivet. It's a Scotch single malt. And it's called Enigma.
Yeah, it is.
And they tell you nothing about it. So like, I think they got this 2 years ago, right before everything shut down. And I just like the box because I'm like a little goth girl at heart. And I was like, it's a black box and a black bottle. Like I want it. And the guy at the store was like, it's actually good. Like I know why you're buying it, but it is actually it's a good Scotch.
Wouldn't that be a terrible trick? We're
right?
not telling you anything about this very expensive bottle. And
yeah,
it's terrible.
It's different. I've only like had 2 drams of it, but it's like a little smoky, a little sweet. Like I haven't gone back to read like the distiller's notes because I don't want it to be influenced by them. You can see how serious I got. Like we're talking whiskey. Yeah. But
we
in
the lockdown.
I think we have maybe somewhere between 40 and 50 bottles of whiskey, like bourbon, rye, Scotch, Irish. Yeah.
I mean, you're grown up.
Grown ass people. Yeah, no. I mean, it's funny because like we only get in moods to drink whiskey. Like this will probably be my first one in a week or two. Like every once in a while, I'm like, I'll have a dram, and like this is my amount. Mr. X is usually like up here. I'm like, I feel like having
doing this every once in a while.
Yeah. So these bottles will last.
It's very rock star / literary star.
It is.
You're really combining your worlds in your drink. So
yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about this book. So one of the questions that I really love asking is what was the bright idea at the very beginning of this book? Like what was the grain of sand in the oyster shell that created this pearl? And is it still in the book? Because I know that this stuff, it changes so much in the process. And how did it change as you were writing it? So what was the idea and how did it make the final cut?
So, I mean, the very, very first iteration of the story was, and it still is, Tony's story, because the book is very much Tony's story. Like Seb has an arc, but it really is about her journey. And I don't even know that I intended to write it as a romance. Like it was really sort of this thing that I was playing around with. And I just kept noodling with it and setting it aside, and then noodling with it and setting it aside. And when Source Books came to me and said, we really want to do something with you. Like, what do you got? Like, what can you do? And we wanted like doing something in music because you're all that music thing. And I was like, okay. So I went back and I was like, what could I do? I was like, Tony is in a band, and I had this idea for an all-female rock band on another level. And I was like, what if I marry those 2 things and just make it about these women? And so that's what happened. It was all about me putting women at the forefront of music and rock, and because a lot of rock and roll novels, they're fabulous, but it's almost always the guys. Sure. And then the women are the groupie or the next door neighbor or the lawyer or whatever it is, but they're never front and center on stage rocking out. And so I wanted to give these women that,
Well, you totally did. And
Thanks.
One of the things that I love about it so much is that, you pick it up because it's a romance, right? Mm-hmm. Sold, the back cover copy, it's all about them. Yeah. And it is a romance, but it's also a romance with kind of a dual timeline. And then it's story about music, and it's a story about women in music, and then it's a story about the price of fame, and then it's a story of a mother or a daughter and her parents. Like this is so ambitious, and it's also like the long game where you're clearly setting up other books, not just romantic leads, but like what is going to happen to the Lilies? You leave it at the end of this book where like, what is going to happen?
One of the things that I wanted to do, and I'm surprised I got away with it, was not introduce the romantic leads in the books until you got to them. So like you don't meet, like the next book, the book I'm working on now is Kayla's book, The Drummer, and we have not met her romantic lead yet. Like, I didn't want to make it like, oh, there's this big universe of people, and one of them is going to be, that's not how I set it all up, because their world is constantly expanding. And so they're going to meet new people all the time. So I was like, I don't want to like limit them to the people that they've already met or people that you've already met. Like, I want to be able to like get you to fall in love with someone who's brand new, and want that person for the person that you already know, which is one of the members of the band. So,
I mean, it's almost, it's not a romance, obviously, but it's almost, it's the same kind of relationship, the ups and downs, the stakes between these women in this band. So, I'm super excited to hear that Kayla is going to have a great and satisfying romance, but mostly I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, they,
like it is really.
Yeah, we've got 4 books, So we saw them now at the very beginning of everything. Like, Tony comes in when they're starting, they're getting noticed, and they've got the deal, and they're getting, the press has noticed them. Los Angeles is knocking on the door. And so they're kind of like, okay, we know they're on the cusp of something big. And so for every book, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until, 4th book, they'll be like winning Grammys or something. I don't know. But like, so we grow with them. And I wanted Tony to come in at the beginning here, because I wanted her to grow with them in this thing, rather than come in and they're already at the top and she's got to, she had to fit in with just this unit, this family unit that they had created. And not just with the girls, but with, Jordan and Seb and like everything. She was like, okay, what are the mechanics of this? Like, how does this work? Like, what can I say and not say? Who is sensitive to criticism? Like, she was just walking into the situation blind. And we were with her there. So now that we're all comfortable in the Lilies world, we get to all grow with them through their career. Yeah. But I thought of it as like a love letter, not just to, or a love story, not just between Tony and Seb, but between Tony and the Lilies, between Tony and her own talent, and her potential, because she kind of had stifled herself, saying, I don't want that thing because that's the only way it can be. Right. So I'm going to like cut myself off from that. And then they were like, no, you can do you can do it a different way, Right.
Yeah, and that was also part of the romance, right? Like, in a good romance, the world is opened to, one character by another character. And I love that part of it. The other part I loved about it was how the stakes were so high. And I wonder if that was a part of the fact that they were just starting. And I don't know where you are in the writing process, but is it hard to keep, are the stakes, do they get higher for you as a writer and for your band? But because it's so like gritty and nerve wracking and, oh my God, we've worked so hard and we want this, like it's all baked into this first one. So how are you finding that writing process of keeping the stakes high?
Well, that's the fun part, because people think that once you make it, you're there and you're just coasting. And that is not the way it is at all.
We heard that before.
Like, oh, you sold 1 million books. You could just sit back and cash those checks. Like, no, you got to write the next book. You got to write the next series. And so like, they haven't even had a gold record yet. And then once you get...
They've had one EP, right?
They had an EP that they released on their own. So they haven't even, like, the single that they released on the 11th, the new song that came out, that's their first single on the label. So that determines what kind of marketing they get for the album, which determines what kind of money they get for the tour, which determines what kind of, you know what I mean? So like, you're always proving yourself. And if you win a Grammy, okay, can you win one with the next one? If this album goes platinum, will the next album go platinum? If it only goes gold, well, they're going to drop you. Like that whole, there's always pressure. And the bigger you get, the more pressure there is, because people are waiting for you to fail.
I will say, you and I had scheduled to talk like a month ago. You had your pub date moved.
Yeah.
And you had written it. We were emailing, and I said, well, I hope it's for good reasons. And you're like, so good, I just can't say it yet.
Yeah.
And then like, and like it went bing, 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 where you're the Target book club pick, and your book of the month, and blah blah blah, and all these things. And as you talk about that experience that your make believe band is having, that I'm sure so many other bands have, did that resonate with you? Because having that kind of release is super exciting, but it's also stressful.
Yeah. And you get, is there a sophomore slump? Are people going to hate the second book? You know what I mean? And there's always, you know, like whenever you have a successful anything, the pressure to make the next one as or more successful increases, right? Like that pressure, it's not like it eases up. So these guys, and you know, some of them understand that this is the way the game is played because they've been in it longer. People like Tony is going to be a little bit like, what? You know, but we just had this thing. Yeah, but aren't we doing okay? You know, it's like, well, they don't care what you did yesterday. They care what you do tomorrow, you know.
And how was your head? Because were you writing the second book while all this amazing stuff was happening with the first book?
Yeah, yes. I got revisions back like 3 days before release day.
That's good. You were busy. So
yeah. Yeah. And I was like, wait, what? You know, and all the events were virtual, and there were a lot of like, they had me doing things that I'd never done before, like library events and, you know, bookseller events. And it was all fantastic. But I was like, I don't even know how to talk to these people. This is not something as an indie that I've done before, like, except for like a one-on-one thing. Like talking to a panel, pitching your book. It was almost like pitching a script in Hollywood. You know what I mean? And I was like, so now I'm a PR book picture person. Like it was so much. It was all fantastic, and I'm glad that I did it. But it was like being thrown into the fire, like right away. And I was like, you know, you guys realize I haven't done any of this before, right? You know,
very new at this.
Yeah.
So all of those aspects of your book, you know, romance, dual timeline, daughter with parent issues, the band, the price of fame, you've got some addiction issues going on in there. What was your favorite to write, and what was the hardest to write?
My favorite, I think, is, you know, as a musician, I love the thing that happens when you meet creative kindred spirits. You know, I think Tony goes into the situation, it's temporary for her, you know, and she's like, I'm here to get the cash, get some experience, get my name out there, and then I'm going to bounce and do my own thing. And they're like, some of them are like, yeah, this is temporary. We can get Candy to get her act together. Others are like, who knows what's going on? It was very much like up in the air. And then once they clicked, it was like, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if Candy didn't come back. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, maybe, you know. So I love that thing where you're like, wait, we're supposed to be doing this together. So that I think was the most fun for me to write, and to get those moments where things clicked in rehearsal and they were like feeding off of each other and all that stuff. Like that was like, you know, writing from experience and writing from the passion that you have for music. The hardest thing was probably writing Tony's mother, because I didn't want to make her a villain. She's not the greatest person, but I didn't want to make her like an out and out villain. Like she's a victim of her own, whatever, her own ambitions and her own.
Yeah. And the times, right? Like
the times
open to her, and
yeah.
I had a lot of sympathy for her. I did.
Yeah, I did too. And I'm glad that no one was like, oh, I can't stand Mary, like whatever. Like they just sort of like, yeah, she wasn't the greatest. And I went back and forth about whether or not what kind of relationship Tony and Mo were going to have by the end of the book. You know, and I was like, I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about it and make it like, oh, it's all rainbows. So I kept it grounded, but I wanted to bring her some sort of outside inkling of support, you know, outside of these people. So that's why
she did not have a lot of support, and she was tough on her own, and you saw that it cost her.
It cost her.
I loved all that. But man, I was a real sucker. For Mo too. Like,
yeah. Well,
Mo's the dad.
Yeah, sorry. Mo and Mary.
Tony's with mom. Mom gets this big break, and she puts her daughter on a bus. She's like, you're going to go stay with your dad, who doesn't know you're coming.
12 years old. 12 years old. Get on this bus.
Kid, you'll be fine.
This place you've never been to see this man to live with this man you've never met. It was just like
it didn't go great. I mean, but it was, you know, I had a lot of I loved those scenes. Those were beautiful scenes. So you have a tremendous amount of experience in the music industry. You have written and produced your own music, other people's music. Your father was like is a legend. So how fun was that to bring that to your work? Like, it must have just been like, I am meant to do this.
Yeah, it's funny because I've written, this is Squishy, which was, I call the book Squishy because it's a long title. Squishy was like my ninth, I think, mid or full length book or something like that. And it's the first time that I wrote as like so much of my personal experiences into a book. And it was like, they were like, yeah, we really want that stuff in there. We want all your music stuff in there. And I was like throwing everything in there, the kitchen sink. And then I read something to my dad or sent something to my dad. And he was like, you might want to dial that back a bit. It's a bit too technical. Like, you're going to lose some people. Like roll it back just a little bit. Cause I got into like sound waves and all kinds of, he was like,
and your father had to be like, baby, that's not how you write a book.
He was like, which is funny because I'm helping him, I'm coaching him through writing his memoir now. But it was really great to get those like fun moments that bands have, and even like the fights, the little like, nitpicky sort of like you're in a bad mood and you're taking that on your bandmates, like those little like snippy arguments, little digs that they have, and then it's like, but like they come to each other's defense like right away, like I think, but you can't say that thing, so like I wanted to really portray some of that in there, and then just the joy of creating music, of finding like the one scene when nothing's clicking, it's not quite going right, and it's like one little suggestion and then everything falls into place and they're all like, yeah, we kick ass, yeah, it's like those little moments. I wanted to give that insight of what it's like to be a working musician. Even the scene in the studio,
yeah, where she's done auditioning, but they're like, no, I'm thinking of the wrong thing, where they were jamming for the first time.
Oh no, yeah, no, I mean the one where she's in the paid session and they're like giving her a hard time, Well,
that was a part of it that I really liked, and again, it's like when contemporary novels come out of a place that are really, really specific like this. There's something about it that, I mean, it's not a mystery, that reminds me of historical novels where the details of setting and experience make the book so much richer. So all the stuff about hired guns and how they could, how many different ways there are to sort of make a life in music that aren't what we think it is. And I found that really fascinating. So was your, what you had said that your instinct was to throw it all in. Was it hard to figure out what to use and what not to use, or did you? After that first,
yeah. I mean, it was just the one scene. He was like, yeah, and it was actually the studio scene in the beginning, because when she's like looking over the shoulder, and I went into some details I didn't need to go into. He was like, you got enough there. But yeah, I mean, it was like, I try not to let my bitterness with the music industry come through too much. It is a business of business. It's not a business of creativity. If you are not making money for them, they will drop you. They will shelve your album if you're not playing ball, whether they like it or not. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that happens. So I was like, I don't want to make it so I want it to be like an actual goal for them to get this thing, not something. Right. So I had to like dial back, and some of that will be peppered into the rest of the series, because they run into all kinds of obstacles. But I wanted to just the joy of getting the thing that all bands or most bands want, which is like, you get the record deal, you get that moment, you get in front of a bigger audience, you get in front of bigger whatever. So I wanted to share that, and hopefully I did it in a way that anybody, whether they were in music or not, could appreciate and feel the joy with them.
I love too, and reading some of your author's notes, that you picked rock and roll, like that this was going to be like a hard band, like this was not a pop band. And whatever my perception, our readers, outside whatever's view of girls and women in pop music or whatever, you don't see it in rock and roll. You really like. It is really rare in an all-girl band. And I like that, like, it made the guys that were jerks to them, it made it really believable, because it feels really rare.
Yeah. It's funny because their first single on the label is a pop-y indie rock song, like which is a thing that happens. Like when I was doing research, I looked at bands like the Go-Go's.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen the Go-Go's documentary, I highly recommend it. And I wish I had that as a resource, like much, much earlier, because there was a lot of their story that I didn't know. They were a punk band, an LA punk band, like, mosh pit, the whole nine. And I would never have thought that ever. And it was so funny, because there's one part in the documentary where they're talking about the songs, because they wrote their own songs. And I think it was Our Lips Are Sealed. And they were like, yeah, we played that. I think Belinda Carlisle wrote the song, and she was like, yeah, we played that. And they played it at punk speeds. The song was like 2 minutes long, or 1 minute 30 or something like that. And so all the producer did was slow them down to 3 minutes so that they could be. And I was like, and then I'm thinking in my head, okay, yeah, if you speed that up, that's a punk song. Like it's like the chord progression, everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. So what I've done with the first single for the first label single for the Lilies is take a poppy indie song, made a poppy indie song out of like a girl rock indie song. So it's a little bit lilting, a little bit radio friendly, commercial, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, man, they must have been. I mean, I've seen that documentary, and I mean, the position that they were in to be getting all of that stuff and having to compromise on who they believed and knew themselves to be. And
it happens a lot. It happens a lot. I mean, who was it? Was it Christina Aguilera had a famous like falling out with her label because she was tired of doing the thing that they had her doing. Kesha is fighting with her manager. I mean, I once took my sister, wanted to audition for American Idol, and I took her to the audition, and we got there like 6 a.m. or something to get in this line. And once you got inside, they make you sign the contract just to audition. This thing. And I said to her, like, do you really want to sign that? They own your name, your likeness. They could put it on toothpaste. They could put it on anything. Like, they own you. And there are still some contracts like that, and then the contract that the Lilies get is not favorable to them, which is why Jordan comes in and is like, oh, we got to figure out how to like manipulate this and get out of this, because you guys signed everything over. Like, what were you thinking?
Well, you have that great line where that great scene where Tony goes in to sign the contract to be brought in for a few weeks, and he does a bit of a bait and switch, gives her this contract for the lighting.
The lighting company,
and she's about to sign it, and he's like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Don't sign that. Like, that's amazing. So did your sister audition?
She auditioned.
Did she do?
She was determined
to do
it.
She signed it.
But we learned that day, because we were there for like 15 hours or something.
Oh boy.
Was that if you could sing, and my sister is a singer, it didn't matter. If you were in a costume or looked like wild or something, you got straight through to the next round. If you were a singer, they were looking for that thing, that ratings grabbing thing that they could either use in the audition week episodes or get you in front of the panel or whatever. But it was like a cattle. It was really weird. Like they stepped up in like 4 breaths, and it was like, okay, go, stop, go, stop, go, and it was just like that. By the time we got there, she was maybe 10 seconds in front of them after like waiting for 15 hours. It was degrading.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about all of this. You having read some of your author's notes and stuff like that, you are a proud member of many fandoms, right? And
I'm a fangirl.
You are creating such a fandom. So you've created the Lilies. The Lilies have a Facebook page. They have a Twitter
Instagram. They have Twitter. So does the Electric Unicorn. The Electric Unicorn is on Twitter, and they have a website. And the Lilies have like a few t-shirts, but like everybody's gonna have merch. Like it's just gonna be merch central. Like that was like the thing I wanted to do. I was like, when I talked to Source Books, and they were like, what do you have in mind for like how you want to market? How would you market this? Kind of thing. And I was like, I want to create a fandom, honestly. Like I really just want the fan art. I want people doing covers of the songs. Like I want people, and I the thing that's been really, really heartwarming about this process was that, a week or two after the book came out, I started getting like reels, people making reels of themselves as the Lilies, or like I used to be in a band and I miss it, and you brought that back, and here I am with my guitar at 16. I'm like, oh my gosh, like all, like especially like Black women who were like, man, yes, Black women rock, Black women play rock and roll too. Like, why has nobody ever talked about this? And I was like, yes, it was just like, this is exactly what I wanted. So it's been like I had shed tears sometimes when I see some of these posts.
Well, you have to, and you're in the back of your book. You have the sheet music.
For that. That's the song that just came out. Yeah.
And so you are performing. Excuse me if I have this wrong. You are performing with your band these songs. You are in this situation, the Lilies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some cool shit, right? Really cool shit. So, how long have you been in a band? Are you like, how is that going? What's happening?
How long have I? Well, it's so funny. It's me, and it's funny because my band are all guys, and I'm like, you guys are all the Lilies now. But I've been
used to it, man.
Right, and I'm like, you're Candy, and you're. I've been with this particular lineup. Well, two of them, my guitarist and my bassist, I've been playing with for quite some time. At least 10 years each. The drummer is a little newer to me, maybe 4 years, because he stepped in when my original drummer couldn't play anymore. But yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. And when I started writing in general, while I was on tour, I was in, I think, Portugal or somewhere, and got bored one night coming back from a gig. I had all this like adrenaline and stuff, and like just needed to get it out. And it wasn't writing anything that I intended to publish. It was just like some fandom adjacent fiction that I wrote on Tumblr, and then my little 20-30 followers were like, oh, that was really cool, you should write some more. And then like 200,000 words later, I had this huge thing I didn't know what to do with, and a friend of mine was like, you kind of written a romance there, you should do something with that. So that was like, like the music was there, and then one day I was like, I mean, I wrote fan fiction for Buffy, and I wrote like poetry, and I'm a songwriter, so I've always been a writer of some sort. But
it's not a stretch. It's not a stretch.
Yeah, I never thought to publish anything, and that wasn't until that sort of thing fell out of me that she was like, yeah, you should probably do something with this. And so it's nice to come back full circle to the music and doing music for the fiction and marrying those two.
I mean, it's got to be a goddamn delight. So, real quick, I want to go back and talk about a couple of the characters in the book. Sebastian, the love interest. He's like, oh, my dog is barking at the door, and I'm gonna real quick for those of you who are like, Molly, when you stand up and let in your dog, it looks like you don't have any pants on. I always have pants on. So, sorry, my dog is one of those dogs that if the door is open, if it's not open enough that she can just walk through, she doesn't know what to do. Like, she can't figure out how to walk through. No, she's not. She's cute, but she's dumb. So Sebastian, who is the love interest, he is the man the boy really in the past who kind of abandoned her, and now he is the manager of the Lilies. But man, that guy is messy. Like, he is messy. Like, and in places, and it's funny, like he creates a whole lot of problems in this band. Like, he really does. So was that
trying to do the right thing.
Always,
like he's always trying to do the right thing, and he just I mean, the conversation he has in the scene after the meeting with Jordan, and Jordan's like, mate, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, I got it. He's like, oh my gosh, you're just, I mean, I think he doesn't know how to people.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like all of his boundaries were too squishy. Like, he needed he needed to be, like he was
he and Tony both have abandonment issues, and his are deeper than hers, because one is through loss and the other's through abuse and neglect. And so, and then he feels this guilt of something he did when he was 18. That was one thing that I really wanted to, and I was worried that readers wouldn't buy it, is that, because I did see, a couple of people were like, oh, she forgave him too quickly. And I'm like, They were kids. They were kids, and once she realized what happened, because she did carry that, because they did have this like pact to get out of Borden together, and so she had to like regroup. But she knows with the resentment that she felt that it was like we were teenagers, like
Yeah.
But
it's funny.
He held on to it.
Yeah, and felt a lot of guilt about it for a long time.
Yeah.
You really, really walk the very, very thin line that I love as a reader between romance and women's fiction. And what romance readers want and will forgive is so different from what women's fiction readers want and will forgive.
Yeah.
And so you'll make a decision, like in this case, they were kids. Romance readers are like, no, we don't like that. They're like, yeah, we get that. Like it's whatever pulls the fantasy together. It's just really interesting, and it's a vast, ravenous, delighted, and engaged readership, but it can be a tightrope sometimes. That little line.
Yeah.
So the other character I want to talk about is Candy. Is Candy going to get a book?
You're the third or fourth person that's asked that. Candy is in the series to stay. She's not gone. So I'd be curious to see if people.
I don't like that answer.
Still, she's not original. She's not one of the original four to get a book. So I don't know, because I've had people ask for Jordan's book. They want Jordan's story.
Yeah.
I had one bookseller ask if I was going to do like a prequel novella with Mo and Mary, which I thought, wow. Like that would be interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. But Candy is an interesting character because I didn't want to make her a supervillain. She does some pretty vile things, but I didn't want to make her unsympathetic, completely unsympathetic. Yeah.
And that is the romance reader. You make somebody not completely a villain, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna redeem them in another book." Everybody deserves love.
Yeah. And she's one of those people that was born with everything that people think once you have the money and the cars and the houses and you're traveling, you're whatever, you're set. But it's very clear that she is emotionally stunted or abused or whatever, however you want to put. Like she's got issues, and having the money is not going to solve them. So.
And her wires are crossed, and her instincts are usually right, but. You've done a good job. I want to see her redeemed for sure. She is, and
she lives on the defense. She's always on the defense.
Yeah,
like she doesn't even believe that they care about her. That was the really heartbreaking thing. That was a heartbreaking scene to write when they're trying to say, "Just stop doing this to yourself and to us." And she's like, "I see what's going on." She just can't even accept that these people care about her, other than what she can do for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm in for all of them. I'm in for every single one of them. I can't wait for the rest of them. I was reading it and I put it down for a second. I was like, the balls on this one. Like it is, you really swung for it and you crushed it. I loved it so much.
Thank you so much.
And it is, if you did like Daisy Jones and the Six, like it does have that, weight to it. Like it does sort of have that, like not everything gets tied up in a bow. So yeah, it's a real delight. So thank you for coming out and hanging out with me.
Sure, no, anytime. This was fun.
It's always nice to talk about your book, huh? To everybody out there listening on the podcast, please remember to come join the Facebook group Day Drinking with Authors. I've got a lot of announcements coming up in the next few weeks. We're taking some time over the summer, but I will be having some special guests for sure. And everybody out there, have a drink, read a book, get vaccinated, please.
Yes, please. Stay safe.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Xio.
Bye, everybody. Good night.